All right, welcome, boys and girls, back to another episode of the IDP Plus podcast. I am Steve Thomason, aka Dynasty Santa, joined by my handsome co-host
Oh,
Matt Record,
oh, please.
aka M Record 21. How's it going, Matt? We had some big news today.
That's a me. That's some big news. I don't know how fantasy relevant it is. We're gonna talk through it, but big news. DeAndre Hopkins has finally moved on uh
Yeah.
from, I guess, free agency. He's moved on.
There's been speculation for weeks now, right? I mean, I think the final two teams it was coming down to was between the Titans and the Patriots. I think you
Mhm.
probably would have liked to see a different outcome here, huh?
Yeah, before I get to that, welcome to the IDP Plus podcast, everybody. We if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to this video. Put comments throughout while we're talking. If you are listening to us, be sure to subscribe there. Obviously, thank you for doing that. Yeah, let's get right into that Hopkins stuff. So the Patriots, we have never ever gotten like a big name wide receiver,
Yeah.
right? Like, obviously, Randy
Since
Moss
Randy
is
Moss,
the
right?
one, but, like, that was such an exception. Like, I don't know if it's
Right.
because of what Belichick does or just our unwillingness to pay people.
Mhm.
Granted, I will say this, Hopkins is obviously, a little older now, 31.
Right.
He's still a very good wide receiver. He's not the best wide receiver in the league sort of stuff that we have
Mhm.
there. Uh, I would obviously I want more talent on my Patriots team. We don't have a whole lot
Mhm.
of like big old playmakers. I don't know if he would have fit the mold of what who we normally have, and or there's the very big run first offense. I don't know how he's going to fit there. Related on the Titans, I don't know how to project him there because I still think
Right.
it's gonna be a run first team there. Uh, at some point, I think they're gonna potentially move past Tannehill, right, and go to Davis,
Sure.
which who knows how he does. Obviously, they have Traylon Burks still there. They have that tight end who I can never say his name, so I'm not even gonna
Chig, big
try.
Chig.
Big Chig. Uh, so yeah, it's an interesting spot. It's an interesting landing spot. I personally, I'm gonna buy the dip on Traylon Burks. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, Burks' stock is
Yeah.
down." I don't think so. I think it's just someone
True.
else for opposing defenses to key in on, and then Burks is going to kind of be opened up a little bit. So I'm going to buy the dip there. Let someone else try to figure out DeAndre Hopkins and sort of go from there. What are you thinking?
I'm right there with you. For your Patriots, they apparently like to pay old wide receivers who only have one really good fantasy season under their belt,
We
not
like known
several.
commodities.
So that's weird. They let Myers walk, who knows their system, bring in a very similar player in Juju Smith-Schuster for similar money. They don't end up signing Hopkins, but they give Parker a hefty contract for what it is and how old he is. So that was very interesting to see Hopkins kind of land in Tennessee here. But I mean, of all the places that were just needing a wide receiver, he's certainly walking into a shit ton of targets heading his way for sure. I mean, outside of Burks and Chig, there was Nick Westbrook Ikine, who, that dream is dead for any deep dynasty bag holders there. Kyle Phillips, still probably projected to play a slot role, but hopefully that goes actually more to the tight end, Big Chig. So yeah, Phillips and uh, Big Nick kind of lose some steam here. People are still taking Hopkins in Scott Fishbowl and Best Ball, like underdog leagues. I was seeing still around like round 5. Do,
Oh,
do you think it's
insanely
going to
high.
go any higher? Does it go lower with this landing spot? Like,
Well, the interesting thing, right, with him is when we didn't know where he was going, it was a wild card. Like, it could end up in a
right?
great spot with a great offense
Yeah,
that's, actually gonna throw the ball to him, like, back when the Bills were projected to be in there or the Chiefs, right?
yeah,
Like, anyone
yeah.
can go there with any talent and be successful. But yeah, then you get the opportunity or the chance that he goes to a place like the Titans, which again, I
Right.
think he's gonna be fantasy relevant, right? Like, you're still talking like a wide receiver 3? Maybe
Yeah.
3, 4, depending on the week. Um, So I feel like it's gonna drop now, actually. I feel like
Mhm.
everyone kind of gets hurt by this, except for maybe Tannehill,
Right.
at least to start, especially in redraft leagues. Uh, but yeah, it's it felt like a lot of hoopla, and then it's a little bit of a letdown where it ends up on the Titans. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
They
that the Titans. Like, what happened to your checklist, dude? Like, you wanted,
yeah.
like, you wanted a stable GM. I think they have a new GM this year. You
Yes.
wanted a really good quarterback. Mm-mm. Uh, you want like a really good defense and like a championship level team. It's not
Yeah.
the Titans. They're probably a playoff team. I don't think this moves them up into the actual Super Bowl contender. So it's like, oh, you actually wanted money. Got it.
Gotcha. As a self-admitted pessimist, I'm slowly becoming more optimistic about this move for Hopkins, for Burks, for Tannehill. Not so much Chig anymore. He definitely is, should probably lose a round or two of ADP, but he was already going pretty much in the double digits, even as a sleeper tight end. So um, I don't know. I think, yes, they're run first, but that defense is still not good. Arguably got worse with the people they lost and
Yeah.
might potentially lose. Kevin Byard is a cut slash trade candidate. So I mean, they lost all of their linebackers. There is a guy that we're going to be talking about later, but he's not some sort of perennial stud. He's going to be, we think, great for IDP, but for real NFL purposes, I don't know what Aziz Al-Shaair is going to bring to the table as their middle linebacker. So with this defense arguably getting worse from last year, and teams did nothing but pass all over them, they're going to be in positions again, most likely, to not be able to just pound the rock with Derrick Henry anymore. So I'm actually like, becoming slightly more optimistic about this whole thing. If Tannehill can just stay healthy, that's what we need. We need a full, like, solid, like 15 games out of Tannehill this year, and I think we can see some very productive seasons for both Hopkins and Burke. So slowly coming around on this whole thing.
Can't wait to see it.
All right, so that's our little here part, giving you guys some more plus to the plus. So that was our little offensive spiel today. While I change up screens here, Matt, do you want to tell the fine people about some of our cool upcoming things going on as far as leagues go?
Oh, I would love to. So if you've been following us on any of our socials, we've been pounding these new leagues that we're excited. Well, some new and some returning leagues. So we've been rocking some IDP guys plus you. I think as of writing or as of this recording, there's still some spots open in our fifth one where you can win an IDP guys subscription while playing against some of your favorite or least favorite analysts. We also have some best balls that have been kicked up. Very similar in terms of what you can win. Best ball is a little less of a commitment because you're kind of just drafting and you let it go. Very fun format. Also on Sleeper. We're super excited about that. Again, compete against us, win a free subscription to IDP guys if you end up winning that. Maybe some other fun surprises, which are maybe in the works there. We also have our invitational, another free one to play over on MFL. That is our charity event where we're asking for donations towards autism awareness or really any other charity you'd like to donate to. But we're kind of emphasizing the autism side there due to some historical people, employees of IDP guys from back from that league's inception. There's still time to sign up. We're trying to wrap that up in the next couple weeks. So if you have not signed up, again, free to play. Please sign up on our website. And then finally, the big one, the IDP Masters Championship. We're getting that thing kicked off. That's a $35 entry. It's only for members of the IDP guys, like subscribers in there. And it's to prove you're the best of the best. There's some really cool things we're giving away there. It's a lot of money that goes to the winners of the various divisions and the champions. We in the past given away trophy smack stuff to the overall champion and even some of the smaller people. We've given out rings, the trophies. It's really the best of the best. very deep leagues, offense and defense. It's a heckin' blast. I did it last year for the first time. It's great. Again, you can sign up for that on our website. We'll put links to everything in the description below. Or if you're listening to us, head over to idpguys.org to check out all of these really cool leagues. There's something for everyone, from your free best balls where you just have to draft all the way up to the IDP Masters tournament where it's pretty cutthroat out there. Did I miss anything, Steve?
I don't think so. Yeah, so right, teams that you know, just draft and forget about it and check in and see how you're doing versus teams that need to be heavily managed, weekly waivers in order to, take home that championship. I believe there's also a discount available to become a member, correct?
That is correct. When you sign up, this podcast has an exclusive code that you can use. It is IDP plus. That's the symbol plus pod. That's IDP plus pod for 10% off everything in your cart, exclusively for listeners of this podcast. So head on over, check that out. That's good for anything.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a great discount. And yeah, I think there's some really fun stuff in store over the next couple of weeks. We are going to be hitting the ground running here as people wake up to fantasy football, right? A lot of people are kind of coming out of their slumbers and hibernations right now. So we're going to do our best to give you some top-notch tips. And the best way to do that, not only by listening to the IDP Plus podcast, is to become a subscriber over at idpguys.org. So we are going to take our first question of the week. So Michael, I believe that's two underscores, if I'm not mistaken, in his name, underscore Sicoli, hailing from the mean streets of New York, asks us, which player are you not excited for in 2023, but incredibly hyped about in 2024? Now, he does not designate IDP or offense. I have one offense and one IDP in mind. So if you'd like me to go first, I could do that. I know I didn't hit you with the offense here in the pre-show. So
Yeah. No,
yeah,
all
so
I could
I'm
think of, since you're saying, like, waking up, it's just like the coming out
yeah.
of my cage and I've been doing just fine. Gotta. Like, I have this piano just sitting here. It's like, I can't help it. Uh,
Well, how
but
about
yeah,
that, folks? Live entertainment right here on
that's
the
what we
show.
do.
How
That's
about
what we do.
that? All right. So for offense, a guy that I am uh, not excited for this year, but am going to be way more excited for next year is Javonte Williams, the running back for the Denver Broncos. That injury from last year, I believe he tore multiple ligaments. With Now he had surgery, of course, and I believe reports I've been following, mostly on Twitter, indicate that he basically he's just not 100% yet. I think it was some either follow-up surgery or scarring tissue. I'd have to double check that, but essentially he's the complete opposite of Brees Hall. Brees Hall is trending to play in week one. Javonte Williams, we still don't really have much information about. So also, new coaching regime there, new offensive scheme. The coach brought Samaje Perine from the Cincinnati Bengals. They gave him decent guaranteed contracts. So I just don't think he's going to be a viable option this year. However, what do they always say? 2 years after those major knee and leg injuries is usually the sweet spot for very talented running backs. And I will take nothing away from Javonte. He's incredibly talented, second round draft pick. He has flashed at times when he's had the job all to himself. So he is a guy that in pretty much any format, I'm not super excited about this year and will be trying to acquire for next year's season. So listen, if you can get him cheap this year, but you know what? Just the fact that he, the surgeries are over, he is going to be at camp, he might be ready for week one. All the people that have him rostered, especially in Dynasty, are not going to be just giving him away for super cheap. You might want to try to find that out for 100% fact, but most of the people that have drafted this guy, are fans and are, waiting to fully reap the benefits of a fully healthy Javonte Williams. So, now if he as I'm predicting, does not have a great 2023, that could be the time to strike and make a deal maybe towards the end of this year or in the off season. Then people may finally be soured on him. But year two back for the running backs, that have those injuries is usually the sweet spot. So that is my offensive player for 2023. Not excited. Am excited in 24. Would you like to go, or do you want me to hit my IDP
Yeah,
guy?
let's take the offense. For me, it's a rookie, which we're kind of in rookie mode, so it's pretty easy to go that route. For me, it's Dalton Kincaid there on the Bills. He's been getting just a bunch of hype uh, on the internet, and I mean, in theory, it's a nice landing spot. My concern is the Bills have a whole lot of mouths to feed. Dawson Knox, say what you will about him as a overall player, he certainly eats up touchdowns, right? Like Josh Allen trusts him down there. So where I'm seeing Kincaid come off the board, especially in the Scott Fish Bowls and some of these other sort of things, and there's these redraft formats. Uh, I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna do a whole lot. It's kind of like a Trey McBride situation last year, where it's like, yeah, it's a highly rated tight end. Didn't really do anything until an injury happened to Zach Ertz in Arizona towards the end of the year. It's like, sure, that could happen to Dawson Knox, obviously, but in terms of what you have to pay for Kincaid right now, again in redraft, which the way I read this question from our lovely friend Sicoli is kind of more redraft. Like if you're in Dynasty, sure, stash him. I really like him in 2024 as he builds that chemistry with Allen. But for this year, I'm going to let someone else take that risk or try to get him off of waiver wires once he actually does prove that he's relevant this year.
I think that's an excellent call. I'm also uh, becoming a Dawson Knox value hunter at this point. If you're punting on TE, I think a lot of people assume he's just automatically lost his job, and I don't think that's the case at all. He definitely was pretty disappointing last year, and he probably never started him during the right week, which those guys can be incredibly frustrating to have on your team. But I think he could really this could be motivation. They take the first round tight end. I guess I'm on my way out, so I'm gonna play my ass off this year and make sure I can land somewhere else and find a starting gig. Because yes, Kincaid is coming, but I think that's a great call for punting on this year. Um,
Well,
my IDP player, yeah,
just for example, Kincaid's coming off the board in Scott Fishbowl at ADP of 121, and Knox's
yeah,
ADP is 169. Like it's a difference of
that's crazy.
50 picks. Uh,
Yeah,
like you're looking at like round 11, 12 for Kincaid or round 6, 15, 16 for Knox. So,
yeah.
that's a big discount for just assuming the rookie tight ends, which are notably not great year one,
Mhm.
regardless of who you are. Uh, just to assume that's going to happen. So, yeah, I'm glad we're on the same boat there.
I'm I'm actually surprised Kincaid was going that low in Scott Fishbowl. I thought way more people, but I think there's a lot of industry people, there's a lot of sharp players there to kind of recognize rookie tight ends. Tend to not do great in year one. So um, yeah, definitely a great call on that one. My IDP player is a rookie linebacker for the Los Angeles Chargers, um, Diane Henley. I am a huge fan, and I think he could walk into kind of like a N'Kobe Dean, what we're seeing, complete role all to himself in the year 2024. You've got Kenneth Murray on the last year of his rookie contract, did not have his fifth-year option picked up. He's likely out the door. Eric Kendricks, I believe, signed a 2-year deal. He's ancient though, and I'm sure they can get out of it. If he suffers some kind of injury, which could very well happen. If that happens, Henley could be very relevant in 2023. I'm just, it's tough to predict injuries, so I'm not going to do that. But if it happens, he could be great in 2023. But definitely on my radar for 2024. A great dynasty stash on your taxi squad if you can do it. But definitely, he's third round rookie linebacker. And as our guy, David, DJ Cowtown, has done some great analysis and articles regarding year one production for third round rookie linebackers and is not good. So I'm gonna follow that path. Now year two, everything is out the door and you kind of reset the clock. But yeah, so Diane Henley, Chargers rookie linebacker, someone I'm big on for 2024.
Hell yeah. For me, it's kind of a cheat code. So I'm trying to think of a different one. But Trenton Simpson, another rookie
Yeah,
linebacker there in Baltimore. I
makes
mean,
sense.
obviously you have Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, who expect to have huge 2023s. I'm very high on both of them. But
Mm-hmm.
notably, the Ravens declined the fifth year offer or fifth year, yeah, uh, extension there for Queen, which
Mm-hmm.
typically isn't a good sign for his longevity there.
Nope.
They invested with enough, draft capital there for Trenton Simpson that kind of a easy prediction to say he's gonna come into that, LB2 spot,
Yeah.
beside the monster that is Roquan Smith. And Smith has often proven that the linebacker 2 next to him still gets to feast, you know? So,
Mhm.
I there's no other than an injury, Trenton Simpson should have no spot on anyone's roster, unless it's dynasty and redraft roster. But then
Right.
dynasty, yeah, that is a huge staff that I would be extremely excited. I mean, Dean is
Mhm.
a wonderful example where we expected things from him last year, maybe a little too much too soon. But all of a sudden
Mhm.
now he has the spot with no one really there to fight him for it, right?
Mhm.
So you're gonna get a starting linebacker. Just all you have to do is wait.
Exactly. So Dean had this. I think this is a very important point from a bigger picture strategy issue that I want to touch on. With these younger linebackers, in Dynasty, yeah, you're going to see people, they're going to go appropriately for the most part. But if you're just playing 1 year redraft leagues, do not waste the draft pick. Now, some people might, and if they hold on all year long, good for them. But what I envision happening is that people are going to think they're cute, take these guys like Simpson, like Henley, like Dorian Williams, like Drew Sanders, hope and pray that the people in front of them get injured. But when it doesn't happen and bye weeks start coming around, they're going to be the first ones added to waivers. And that's where you just watch like a hawk what's going on. We will tell you what's happening following injuries, following snap counts. But that is when you want to keep your eyes on the prize for guys like that, these third round linebackers. But don't waste your draft picks in a redraft league. Take the veterans. Take, high upside defensive backs, at the very instead of wasting your last round picks on these rookie linebackers outside of Jack Campbell, take swings on Marcus Jones, take swings on defensive backs, defensive linemen, second year defensive linemen. Get in redraft league, give me a guy like Drake Jackson, right? Second year defensive lineman for the 49ers, probably going to play the number two outside spot uh, be, uh, between Nick Bosa, Arik Armstead, and Javon Hargrave. Like, give me a guy like that over pretty much any of these rookie linebackers outside of Jack Campbell. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be so many
100%.
people thinking that I took Trenton Simpson. What if he beats out Patrick Queen in camp? Like
He
the
won't.
the likelihood of that happening is extremely, extremely low. So that's just more of a strategery point that I wanted to hammer home to everyone, especially playing, redraft or 1 year IDP leagues. In Dynasty, we love these guys, but
Mhm.
don't love them in redraft. So
Yeah,
let
and
me
since
see
I
if
love
this
Sa
will, yeah.
since I love Sakoli, I'll give him 2 more. This one is just for you, my guy. Uh, Troy Anderson there on the
No.
Falcons. Maybe he's not a
Okay.
hate this year, but,
Interesting.
he showed some nice things on tape yet last year. I'm just looking at their
Mhm.
depth chart. Obviously, they signed Caden Ellis, who was a stud filling in for Pete Warner there on the Saints. So you expect him to be playing. Bud Dupree only has 1 year left on his contract. Mikael Walker just signed a 2 year contract, but not a whole lot of money. So there's not a whole lot of stuff there. But there's enough bodies there where I'm not sure Anderson's going
Mhm.
to get that play time that you want to be a huge stud. But I think once Bud Dupree's gone, Mikael Walker again didn't get much money there. I think the door is going to be open
Mhm.
for Anderson. That could be this year, which is sort of why I was on the I don't necessarily hate
Yeah.
him, I don't love him,
Yeah.
but in a similar line, Chad Muma. Chad Muma is a name that I freaking
Oh, I love
love
this.
there on the Jaguars. So he kind of outplayed Devin Lloyd
Yeah.
towards the end of the year last year.
Yeah, he
Uh,
did.
and until Lloyd came back and they played him a little more. But obviously Foyesade Oluokun, which I can never say his name, but Foyesade, looking at his contract situation, he's in the second year of his 3-year deal. His
Mhm.
actual money this year is not as much as it is next year, where his base salary jumps from 1 million to 13 million. But there's a
Damn.
potential team out there, if I'm reading this correctly. So all of
Yeah,
a
most
sudden, I
likely.
mean, Foyesade, he racks up a lot of tackles. Other players
Right.
can do that. Are the Jaguars, who now have to start paying some of their other offensive skill position people and other people, are they gonna, because we know the cap is fake in the NFL, maybe get rid
Absolutely.
of the really great tackler to save some money? And then all of a sudden, Chad Muma, who's proven he can do it, kind of just sneaks in there, and it's really nice. So, uh, I really like Muma. I kind of like him more than Lloyd, which probably fantasy receipts will get mad at me for it after this year. But uh, yeah, Chad Muma's another name to keep on your list.
I love that. I love both of those actually. I'm very close to putting Caden Ellis like one spot above Troy Anderson. Like I think he's got for easily the higher ceiling over Anderson. Now maybe the floor isn't as high as Anderson's floor this year, but I love that take. And yeah, Chad Muma, I mean, he's going to be a stud in the league. He's gonna, Logan Wilson, a former third round, like it's he's probably on a similar career path / trajectory there. Maybe he might be a year behind, but that those are great calls. I love it. All right, our question number 2 out of 3 today is from Junior. Aside from Detroit linebacker Jack Campbell and Houston, we'll call him edge rusher Will Anderson, which defensive rookies do you think will have the most fantasy impact or in real life impact in 2023? Also, what position battles intrigue you the most? So this is a very good question. I did link Junior to our rookie IDP rookie fades and favorites. We did do an entire episode nailing a lot of these guys. But for 2023, that it was also more dynasty focused at the time. So this will be interesting for 2023. Um, as I kind of touched on before, I don't think it's going to be hardly any of the linebackers. Like he mentioned Jack Campbell, I do think he's going to have a great, career, great, shot right out of a cannon, out of the gate. But beyond him at linebacker, I really don't see any. I mean, outside the third round guys, Owen Papo over in Arizona, considering that Isaiah Simmons is basically transitioning to a defensive back and that Zaven Collins is essentially transitioning to an edge rusher. I think there's going to be a wide open, and that kind of, okay, answers part of his other question there. I think that's going to be a very interesting camp battle to see the linebackers in Arizona. So I will say dual answer to your questions there. Owen Papo for Arizona, and that battle between Papo and probably Kaiser White and Chris Barnes are the three like traditional linebackers there that will be competing for potentially LB1 and LB2 type roles. So he's a guy to get on your radar. I don't know that if I'm drafting today, I think I'm drafting Kaiser White and nobody else from the three that I just mentioned there. But Pepo will definitely be on my watch list and radar for sure. Um, do you have a guy, a rookie that you think will have a fantasy or in real life impact? I mean, they kind of go hand in hand to a certain extent. What's
Yeah.
up, Kitty?
Oh, it's my cat time. It happens every time.
I love
Uh,
it.
so yeah, love all the names you said. So a few names come to mind. In terms of actually a fantasy impact, like it truly is. People are not typically being drafted and plug and played everywhere,
Mhm.
except for in the defensive back position. So we've proven the last couple of years that the rookie defensive backs can be very fantasy relevant,
Mhm.
especially in leagues where cornerbacks are in play. So
Right.
I look at a lot of those defensive backs, the Devin Witherspoons, the Christian Gonzalez, the
Okay.
uh, the Brian Branches of the world, where
Mhm.
they're going to be playing in real life. right? And that means they can be fantasy relevant. So especially in those deeper leagues, I think they have the best chance. Outside of that, yeah, it does come down to some of those camp battles. So let's take a look at your favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys and linebacker chart.
Ooh,
And who there is a guarantee to play a whole bunch.
yeah.
I'm not seeing much of anything. Obviously, Leighton Vander Esch has been there forever. He's not great.
Right,
Damone Clark has been a sleeper forever, a sleeper that has never woken up. People like
right.
Jabril Cox, very similar story with him. So you start looking at that DeMarvion Overshone, local
Mhm.
guy, linebacker. Is he the most talented linebacker that was in the draft? Absolutely not. Is
Yeah,
he a
fourth rounder.
linebacker that can very quickly, whether due to injuries or actually for these people, maybe outplays these people, all of a
Yeah.
sudden seeing the field quite a bit with teams trying to limit that amazing, sorry, Cowboys pass rush where they're going to try to run past them and now they can just soak up a bunch of tackles. That's an absolutely real possibility for this year. As you mentioned, this is not someone I'm going to actually draft other than maybe in
Mhm.
the invitational like last round, like just an
Yeah.
actual flyer. Um,
Sure.
but you tell me week 8, we look up and say, "Hey,
Mhm,
which rookie linebacker is scoring the most points right now?" I
mhm.
think it might be Overshown.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, we've seen teams are sort of treating linebackers like the running backs of defense, right? We only saw one go in the first round, then none till the third. Overshown was, I believe, a fourth. But that, looking at the room, like you said, there's just not a ton of talent around him. Van Der Esch was the first, but I think he has not lived up to that pick at all from a talent and production standpoint. So not only is the linebacker 2 role wide open, I think the linebacker 1 role could even be open.
100%.
Van Der Esch, we've got kind of an old school coaching staff there, right, with McCarthy and the defensive coordinator there. So I feel like they're going to give the veteran the first crack at things throughout camp and early into the season. But I think you're spot on there with mid season, especially depending on Dallas's record too. If things go not as expected, we expect them to be decent, right? Like middle, 8, 9 wins with that offense is still very good. But if something goes wrong and we look up and they're only won 2 or 3 games um, midway through the year, they could easily just say, "Hey, let's see what this kid's got." So,
And wouldn't you love that?
yeah, definitely. So, yeah, honestly, for redraft, Overshone should be above pretty much all of the third round guys. So, above Williams, above Sanders, above Henley. And who else am I missing? There was another third. Or maybe that's all now. I thought, yeah, and above Simpson.
Yeah, Simpson. Yeah.
So in redraft, that should actually absolutely be the case. So I love that. Another guy I'm going to throw out there. I've just got a huge man crush and love affair with Will McDonald from the New York Jets.
That you do.
Um, he's listed as a defensive lineman. He's basically an edge rusher. I you know we've talked about Overshown a lot on this show. We've talked about McDonald a lot. From what I understand, he had a personal phone call from the head coach Robert Saleh saying, "We're going to basically get you right in our system." He played he he's a very smaller stature defensive lineman, hand in the ground guy. So I think that this is purely projection and speculation until we see the preseason, until we hear about camp reports, things like that. But I think McDonald's going to stand up and play more of that, like a Hassan Reddick type is my projection for his usage and role going forward in this league. And I think he's a starter from day one. We saw Jermaine Johnson get drafted last year by the Jets. I believe they came back into the sort of end of the first. He was like in the 20s and kind of didn't really do a whole lot. But he is more of your hand in the dirt guy. So and McDonald was smack in the middle of the first round. He was like pick 15. So he's got better draft capital. I think he was handpicked, hand identified by the head coach to fit his system, not as a defensive lineman, strictly not as a hand in the dirt guy, but as a stand up edge rusher, more of like a hybrid linebacker / edge rusher. I think he ultimately takes Quincy Williams' job, whether it be early in the year, training camp, preseason, whatever it may be. So I'm big time out on Quincy Williams, and I'll hedge that as part of a camp battle that I want to see. I really want to see where they're playing Will McDonald. Maybe they don't give it all away in preseason or training camp either. So I'm going to take it all with a grain of salt. But I'm in love with his talent. He's a great physical traits he's got. So big fan of Will McDonald for the Jets, and definitely watching, the sort of linebacker 2 / edge rusher camp battle as another one. I'm trying to think of, do you have any more camp battles you can think of? I feel like there's a lot of wide open safety roles.
Yeah.
So another one with a rookie, Jair Brown in San Francisco. We're hearing a lot that he is probably going to be a starter right out of the gate. So obviously Hufanga is there, but that safety 2 role is kind of open. I believe Tashawn Gibson is still there, and as the veteran might project to be the starter, but I
Sure.
think, and I also think they're going to use Brown in one of these nickel or corner / safety hybrid roles. So he's another guy. Excuse me. I'm watching and watching the camp battles as well. So I think that's another name that fits answers for both of those questions.
Yeah, there's a few linebacker cores I'd like to have a little more clarity
Mhm.
on, moving in,
Obviously,
which is not so much rookies, but
right.
the Texans, I have no idea.
Okay.
We know that's a profitable defense. Like, we know, was
Yeah.
it Kirksey was very good last year,
Yeah.
but they have a new, I believe, new defensive coordinator, so we just don't know how
Mhm.
people are gonna be used. Like, sometimes those people have their guys. Like, they brought in
Oh yeah.
Denzel Perryman, which, like, that's a name
Yeah.
that was very relevant a couple years ago.
That is a
Yeah,
name.
he's a guy, and maybe that's their guy, right? And, like, anything that
True.
takes away from Kirksey or even Christian
Yeah.
Harris's production would be not ideal. The Broncos, talking about rookies, you mentioned Drew Sanders there,
Oh
which
yeah.
I guess we're gonna talk about in a little bit, so I'm
Yep.
gonna foreshadow that one, skip right over that. And then the Chiefs linebacker core, right? So
Okay.
we finally had a year where
Yeah.
Nick Bolton
It's
got
crowded.
pert near 100% of the defensive snaps. He
Mhm.
was an absolute stud. I mean, he's going off the board as one of the top 3 linebackers. Then they went and brought in
Mhm.
Drew Tranquil, which is a great, NFL move. Like, that's a stacked
Right.
defense, there with Willie Gay and Leo Chanel, a guy I really liked out of Wisconsin. Go
Mm,
Badgers.
me
Uh,
too.
but now it's like huge. How are they all going to be used? Are we going back to that rotation? Right. It's hard to know, from camp and watching preseason. As someone who wrote, you know, the monster article last year, which started in the preseason, where I went through every single game and looked at snap percentages. All these people aren't going to play. They're not going to
Right.
play. In fact, playing is the story. Where if someone's actually playing, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
they actually might not be, in people's plans. So I'll be looking forward to seeing who actually gets those snaps, and who's playing. And again, if some of these rookies that we're talking about, like, I imagine Drew Sanders is going to play quite a bit. If he does, then that, indicates to me that, okay, the Broncos don't really have any plans, for him right off the bat, at
Yeah.
least during his rookie campaign.
Absolutely. Yeah, spot on. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills linebacker 2
Oh,
role is going
sure.
to be a big camp battle to watch. Um, Between, we've Milano's locked in, but then we've got Dorian Williams, Terrell Bernard, Tyrell Dotson. Literally 33% chance for each of them to win that. A lot of people feel strongly about Williams. I don't really get it why. Bernard has similar draft capital, and Dotson knows the system. So yeah, it's a new coordinator, but I don't envision them changing the system too much there. Um, I'm trying to think. The safety 2 role in Green Bay is wide open.
Mhm.
Jonathan Owens came over from the Texans. Rudy Ford is there, and I believe they drafted a rookie, a Johnson. One of the Johnsons is there. So that could be, not a super great fantasy relevant role. The safety 2, even Darnell Savage is now the safety 1. Nobody's
Yuck,
really drafting him.
yuck.
Adrian Amos, frequently, he had a nice year last year, but after a few years in Green Bay of not really being all that great either. The Detroit role could be wide open. Tracy Walker health versus Kirby Joseph played really well versus what the hell is Brian Branch going to do? Because of course Chauncey Gardner Johnson's locked into a safety role there, but the number two is wide open there. Could be a big rotation. The Dolphins safety two role, we've got Javon Holland locked in as a one, but now Brandon Jones coming off injury versus they brought in Deshaun Elliott. So
Right.
those are there. I think there's outside the Buffalo linebacker battle. I think most linebacker and Houston, like you mentioned, I think most are pretty much locked up. So I don't know if there's a ton. Defensive line, I don't know if there's necessarily much battles going on as so many of these teams rotate these guys. Like the
Yeah.
starters are pretty much locked in. So there's not really a ton of battles, I would say, going on there.
Right.
So it's really in the secondaries and a handful of linebackers. So
Yeah.
hopefully that answers some of your questions there.
Well, and a way to help this transition, yeah, the
Yes.
Browns. Let's talk about
Ooh.
the Browns, because who doesn't want to talk about the Browns? Our video
Love
editor
it.
Grant is gonna love this segment. Only positive things here. Uh, So yeah, our good friend, the Fantasy Ladder, Steve at Fantasy Ladder, asked us this question: what's the future outlook for Drew Sanders? And do you guys think it is a safe, wise move to drop JOK, Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa, on the Browns for Drew
Nailed that.
Sanders to add to Taxi and then attempt to re-add JOK? It's a great question. So
Yeah.
depends on how far in the future we're looking, right? So I
Mhm.
said we talked about the Browns. We'll get to them. The Broncos. I kind of like the landing spot for Sanders. Maybe not in terms of this year's value,
Right.
since
Right.
the Broncos have Singleton. They have what, Browning. Those are the two main ones. Yeah.
Jewel.
Oh, Josie Jewell. Yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot about Jewell. So they have just a bunch of guys that are there to sort of eat up those tackles, which, as we saw, uh, multiple 20 plus combined tackle games from that crew last year. They're very capable of doing. Sanders, after he transferred to Arkansas, was kind of a jack of all trades. He kind of exploded, getting after the quarterback. I forget how many
Mhm.
sacks. I think it was 8.5 sacks in however many
In
games.
that range. Yeah.
In that range. Very talented player. Who knows how he's going to be used? Like I've been comparing him to Micah Parsons, not because I think he's the next Micah Parsons, but more so I can see him being used all over the field, which could be good or could be bad fantasy wise. See how effective he actually is. So I think there's an opportunity for this year that he does get after the quarterback. He's used in pass rushing downs, and they exploit his athleticism there. In that linebacker role, I'm seeing him classified as a linebacker still. You really want that tackle floor, which I just don't think he's going to have this
Mhm.
year until that team moves on from some of those other tackle hoarders. I still think the arrow is pointed up for Sanders. Obviously, uh, you'd hope that has a more clear shot to playing time in year one than he does. But moving on to JOK, talk about a disappointing linebacker. Came out hot his rookie year 2 years ago, right? And then, albeit due to injuries or just the Browns being the Browns, he's never really lived up to any expectations. So if we're talking dynasty here, Steve, uh, yeah, I think it's time to move on because I'm looking at the Browns depth chart and oof, and there's just a bunch of dudes who are just about the same, right? Kind of there's
Guys
JOK,
who I
Anthony
kind of
Walker,
like.
yeah, Sion Takitaki, Jacob Phillips, Tony Fields,
That's my
just
guy.
just uh just a bunch of people that are in the way, and you're never. And I got mad at Steve last IDP Plus, right? Talking about Uche not knowing when Josh Uche for the Patriots, not knowing when
Yeah.
you're going to start him. Turns out, actually, I was wrong. Hand up, he was more consistent than I remember him being last year. So okay,
Boom.
tip of the hat to you, sir. I can tell you that no one was confident ever with the Browns linebacker
Yeah.
core last year.
Yeah.
So you're never going to know when to get him. There's at least upside with Sanders, right? That's the nice thing about these rookies.
Yeah.
Like he might turn into the next
Huge
JOK,
ceiling.
but like there's still hope versus what we've seen from JOK. If you can pull off the move of getting Sanders, putting him on your taxi squad, and then getting JOK again, I think that's going to be doable. I don't know how many people out there are on the prowl looking, checking their waiver wires for JOK. I don't
Yeah.
think that's happening. So yeah, I think you should absolutely do that because there's much higher opportunity there for him than JOK. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah.
My
I
Steve,
agree with that.
Dynasty Santa
Yeah.
Steve.
I agree with everything you just said. I'm not a big JOK guy. Undersized. Did he come out of the gate as a rookie playing well? I don't remember, probably because I didn't have too much of him.
Let me
But
pull up the stats.
yeah, he's been snake bitten with injury, and I don't know. I just don't know where he fits. He feels like more of that linebacker safety hybrid if he could transition to. But I'd love for him to get maybe a fresh start somewhere because I was all over Phillips. And when Taki was getting his shot when Walker went down, like they were both doing really well until they both got injured. So this whole course is just snake bitten by injuries. So yes, 100% Drew Sanders has an enormous ceiling going forward in the future. Steve, Ladder Steve here is definitely talking about dynasty leagues. Drew Sanders should absolutely be ranked ahead of JOK, irregardless of anything. Um, yeah, he profiles to play maybe more as an edge rusher hybrid role this year, but yeah, Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, both approaching 30, which in football is getting up there for not being elite guys their whole career. We're going to talk about Bobby Wagner coming up here. Guys like that you can count on as they get over the hill of the 30s. But two, Jules, mid round, late round draft pick, Alex Singleton, came from Canadian football. Like he's, living a dream story scenario. And I think after this year, that probably comes to an end, if not the middle of this year. So Sanders is going to be walking into a wide open role probably next year. Yeah, I wouldn't even bother trying to get JOK back, to be honest with you. If you have the room on taxi, throw Sanders in there. And I'd love to see who else is out there on your waivers, but if you really want to grab JOK back, sure. But I would absolutely roll the dice to make that move 100%.
Yeah, just fact checking us here. So in 2021, JOK's rookie year, he played 65% of defensive snaps in the 10 games started, 14 overall games. Yeah, I wouldn't say he came off super crazy hot. He had 76 combined tackles, a sack and a half, 3 tackles for a loss, 4 QB hits. But it's enough for like a rookie player that's like, okay, there's some chance here. And he
Yeah.
did go up to 75% of defensive snaps played last year, which are
Yeah.
creeping up to that being a good amount of defensive snaps.
Yeah.
Very similar stat line uh, here, which is not a good thing. Where'd they go? Yeah, 70 combined tackles and 0 sacks, and really nothing else to show for it. So
Mhm.
he played a lot more defensive snaps and had kind of a worse year, which kind of alludes to what was happening there on the Browns, right?
Yep.
Rotations, not really knowing who's going to play any given week, people coming out of
Mhm.
nowhere. So I guess if you were glass half full, I guess I'm the noted optimist here, even though I usually skew pessimistic. Uh, that yeah, maybe he gets that similar close to 80% snap count, which is typically at least my barometer saying, yep, he is going to be IDP worthy, and that
Mhm.
it turns into better stats. But to your point, I don't like that he got 10% more defensive snaps and had a worse fantasy year. I forget, was there any changes to the defensive coaching staff there on the Browns?
Yeah, I think they finally fired their defensive coordinator. Oh yeah, Jim Schwartz is there now.
Okay. So
So
so there's
right,
still that reason
we
for
gotta see.
optimism. Uh, but there's just a lot of dudes there. So yeah, get in the
Yeah.
Discord there, Steve. Anyone listening, get in the Discord. You can see the discourse there. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
Drew Sanders greater than symbol. Okay.
Big time by a lot, greater than symbol. That's another camp battle too, right? Like you mentioned, the
Yeah, who
Browns,
the
both
who the heck
linebackers
knows? Who the heck knows?
and safety, safety two job there. So And it's probably going to be a rotation. It's going to be very
Mhm.
frustrating to own these guys. JOK, former, I believe, second round pick. So people are going to remember that. He comes with the higher fantasy draft price tag. I want nothing to do with it. No thanks. All right. So that concludes the mailbag portion. Now we're going to jump into what everyone is here for. We're going to talk through the top tens for your redraft leagues at each level of the defense. So linebackers, defensive line, and defensive backs. So let's just start with everyone's favorite. Let's give the people what they want. Let's talk linebackers first. So if you're
Cornerbacks.
what,
Oh.
yeah,
Oh, shoot.
top 10 slot cornerbacks now. We're not going to get that deep for those of you crazy enough and degenerate enough to be looking for that deep. That is the kind of stuff you're going to want to jump in our Discord and become a subscriber to talk shop with that stuff. But for right now, we are going to just talk top tens. For a lot of people that might be just starting their first IDP drafts coming up shortly. This is who we've got right now. If you're watching on YouTube, we are scrolling our top 10. These are from our consensus rankings over at idpguys.org, which you will need to be a subscriber to access the full list. But if you're in shallower leagues, we're gonna talk through everyone right here. So we'll obviously count down. Number 10, we have Ernest Jones, the linebacker for the Los Angeles Rams, as our number 10. He's being identified as a breakout, a sleeper. For us in the IDP community, this is kind of an exciting year for us and for Ernest Jones. He's been a sleeper for a while. I believe a former third round draft pick, so solid capital. And here's what we talk about. Year one did pretty much nothing. This is, I believe, year 3 for him, if I'm not mistaken, possibly year 2.
Yep.
Which one? Year 3?
I believe it's year 3.
Yeah. So, and this is when we see these guys kind of start to bloom. He was okay last year. It's either he was okay last year in his rookie year, but not enough to really, be consistent or give you a lot. Or he just did absolutely nothing in his rookie year and finally got to play last year. So doesn't really matter. This year, Bobby Wagner's gone. There is nobody there. You might identify the linebacker 2 role in the Rams as an interesting camp battle, but the number 1 role is all but sewn up and given to Ernest Jones here on a silver platter. So what do you think about Ernest Jones rounding out the top 10 here?
Oh yeah, I think that's a great spot to be targeting him. Just want to clarify, these are redraft rankings, so top 10
Yes.
redraft. But yeah, so the opportunity is there. He was actually perfectly reasonable. His say freshman year, his rookie year, in 7 games started, he had 2 interceptions, 4 pass defended, along with a
Damn.
sack and 61 combined tackles. 61 in
Nice.
7 games started. That's very good. That's very good for a rookie.
Yeah.
And like you said, he kind of exploded last year. 11 games started. He had 114 combined tackles, no sacks, but again, 2 pass defended. And yeah, the opportunity there is huge for him to explode. Like, is 10 maybe too high? Potentially, but I think us here at the IDP guys, we really think he could be one of those league winners. So if you're using our rankings, we want to make sure that you are going out and valuing him as such.
Yeah, that ADP wise, you can get him at not top 10 linebacker values. That's why we kind of wanted to highlight him here. Like, yes, we project him as a top 10 guy, but you don't. What's great and why he makes it there is because of the draft value. You don't have to take him as a top 10 guy in redraft leagues. That's what's so great about it. You can wait a little bit, especially if you're punting the position altogether. He would make a
Mm,
perfectly fine linebacker 1. That's why
mhm,
we're telling you he can. So if you're going for a strategy of kind of punting on that position, he's an excellent target. Now you may have to reach on him a little bit as it gets to those later, mid rounds or early double digits, just to ensure you get him on your team. But man, as a fantasy linebacker too, he's going to be a smash this year. So we both really love him. Also, that team in general, defense is lacking. Overall, the offense has a lot of question marks around it. So uh, that defense could be on the field a lot. He's going to be on the field pretty much 100% of snaps. You talked about he didn't have any sacks because they've got. If anybody's ever heard of a little guy called Aaron Donald on the defensive line, who
Little guy.
usually takes care, usually takes care of business in that department. Although he had a pretty terrible year last year, I think was fighting some injuries as well. And they also had kind of some specialized pass rushers over the past couple of years. Von Miller 2 years ago, Leonard Floyd for the past 2 years. They've Leonard Floyd is gone. He's with the Bills now. Von Miller has been gone. So maybe they do send him after the quarterback. I think Bobby Wagner had like 2 or 3 sacks last year as the main middle linebacker. So you add that into the Ernest Jones toolkit and profile, and you've got close to a stud. I mean, we're bullish, and maybe you won't see him in the top 10 or 12 of a lot of people's rankings, but we are very bullish on him here. There's just nobody else there to eat up the tackle. So I think we're both like him there. Going to number 9, Devin White from Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a stalwart for fantasy production. Kind of an up and down career so far. He was either 2 or 3 years ago. He blew up fantasy players with 9.5 sacks. But we haven't seen him reach that yet. He's been more in that 4.5, 5.5 range for the past couple of years. So, obviously, if he could get back to that point, he would move up these rankings. But I think we're just kind of being cautiously optimistic, putting him at number 9. He definitely has a higher ceiling than that, for sure. It's just we've been not seeing the production that we've kind of wanted to out of him for the past couple of years. So he's apparently unhappy in Tampa Bay. He was looking for a trade this year. So with that kind of cloud looming over him, he's still a very attractive fantasy option, but just kind of settles in at number 9. What do you think about that?
Yeah, again, I think 9 is the right price to pay for someone with that upside, right? So the past 3 years, averaging about 130 combined tackles, and like you said, averaging about 6 sacks. So that amount of tackles is a very nice floor for a linebacker, right? In order
Absolutely.
to be, skyrocketing up the ranks, if you've been drafting him as typically a top 3 linebacker, yeah, you need to get those sacks, the splash plays in there as well. But again, the problem, the the problem with White is just he hasn't met expectations. I think he's been a perfectly fine asset to have, and if
Mhm.
you got him in rookie drafts, you're stoked because you keep throwing him out there and he's not putting up zeros. He's being an asset to your team. He's just not being that top 3 guy, right? So again, I think 9 is right. Looking at people below him and above him, I think I prefer the people above him, and I don't prefer the people below him. Sometimes it's as easy as that. This is another offense that we project to be bad there with the Buccaneers. I don't care if it's
Yeah.
Baker. I don't care if it's Kyle Trask. I think there's going to be plenty of defensive opportunities, and White is one of those players that's just not come off the field. So 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 yeah, 9 feels right.
Yeah, it might be a little bit low, but it's he spoiled us with that major season. So I think that's been people's expectations. Well, why isn't he hitting that year like every year? And it's just these swings happen. Sacks are the touchdowns of
Mhm.
IDP. For defense, they're incredibly volatile, incredibly unpredictable, especially from these guys. Playing at the second level of the defense where their primary job is not to rush the passer. And I'll clarify, our linebackers here are your more traditional off-ball linebackers. We sort of lumped any edge rushers in with the defensive line that will be upcoming here. So right behind him, or in front of him, I should say, is number 8 is Josie Jewell for the Denver Broncos. When healthy, this guy is a monster and a stud, and definitely better than Alex Singleton. And the only reason Alex Singleton sort of got a second chance last year was due to injuries to Jewel. So that's why you're not going to find Singleton quite up this high. But Jewel, again, he pretty much just comes down to health, and he's a smash. He chips in with big splash plays, which is very nice. Handful of sacks, handful of interceptions, handful of forced fumbles. Like he pretty much can do it all. So yeah, I think Jewel is a really nice option here. If you want to say to me Devin White or Josie Jewell, I might. This is why this is hard. I might lean Devin White just because he hasn't been injured, and so and Jewel's older, so the body could be continuing to be more susceptible to injuries. So, but they're back to back here for a reason. I think they're very close. So, what are your thoughts on Jewel?
Yeah, I'll say that, yeah, I on my rankings, which are part of this consensus, right, do have Devin White higher than Josie Jewell. So I agree with
Okay,
you.
so it's
Uh,
me. Damn
it's
it!
you. You're the problem.
And I
Not the
just
problem.
contradicted myself.
It's a healthy discussion. You didn't. Well,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a healthy discussion because the thing is, Jewel, I think, is more of a certainty. You know what you're getting. You're getting someone that's going to get a bunch of tackles. He has the occasional splash play, as you mentioned, not enough so that I have any expectations when I draft him that he's going to fill up the stat sheet with those splash plays. That's more of just like the, ooh, that's nice. That's a nice little tasty treat there in the stat sheet. So there is a place for that, especially in leagues that value tackles. Like we mentioned, Jewel can go off for just a crap ton of tackles any given week and kind of win you your week in ways that I have not really seen before. Like all of a sudden, it's like, oh, that's 20 tackles. Holy crap. Uh, so so I can see going either way. Um, Again, I like White a little more just because there's that potential, like that everlasting potential of that 10 sack year that could come out of nowhere with that tackle floor. But depending on the scoring format, you could tell me Jewel would be right there too. So I think this ranking's fine.
This is a great fantasy football conundrum, right? Don't be a slave to the rankings. As one of my favorite shows, The League, was one of their very first episodes talking about that. Like, do as I say, not as I do. So I'm probably I'm a healthy Josie Jewell season. I think he will score more fantasy points, which is why I have him ranked ahead of Devin White. If it came down to me in the draft room, and just my brain, and I'm not, again, they're back to back. So I might pull the trigger on selecting Devin White ahead of Josie Jewell. Also, because you might be able to get Jewell later, to pair with a Devin White. So that's the other thing. Jewell, similar to Jones, is not going to cost you linebacker 8 prices. Whereas Devin White, we're also sort of directing you to not reach for him like a lot of IDP players will because of the name value. So there's sort of just a inside baseball look at like at least my brain about how I would execute something like this. If Devin White falls to an appropriate level where I can pick between him and Jewell, I'm probably going to pick White. Jewell is going to last a lot longer. I might be able to fill up offense or take some defensive lines, and Jewell will still be hanging around, and then I grab him to pair with White. So that's more top level strategy talk there.
100%. Someone in your draft, unless they're listening to us, is going to reach and pick White as
Uh
a
huh.
top 5 guy again, right? And I
Uh
think
huh.
he's proven he's just not going to be that consistently. So let them do that. Let these other folks sort of fall to you.
Exactly. So that's sort of what our rankings are trying to tell you. Don't reach for White, take the value on Jewell, and go forward. Going forward with number 7 for the New York Giants, similar to Ernest Jones, he's the only guy in the room. Bobby Okereke for the New York Giants. He had an awesome year in Indianapolis last year, playing the number 2 role to Zaire Franklin. And I think he's just going to be a smash in New York with, again, another guy where the job is pretty all but handed to him on a silver platter. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Just for the sake of brevity, like that's pretty much it. Talk about he's the guy. He's the only
Yeah,
guy. He smoked it last year in Indianapolis, 151 combined tackles. Uh, we fully expect him to when people get paid, right? They're gonna
yeah.
be played. And I expect that he's gonna have just a massive year. Enough said.
Yeah. I mentioned Zaire Franklin, who's notably missing from the top 10. I believe he squeaks into the top 12. So I just wanted to address that quickly. With Shaq Leonard still, he might not even play. Franklin, has a case for the top 10. He was a smash last year, but I think we just kind of, I think if people are sorting by the stats for last year, you're going to see Franklin go in like the top 5. And I just
Hmm.
wouldn't want people to reach for him. So
Agreed.
we love Okereke. Yeah, I mean, we saw if you like sort of added all the fantasy points of all the different linebackers who played for the Giants last year, you would get a superstar. And I would say 75% of that production is going to be handed right to Bobby O. So we love him at number 7. Number 6 is an interesting name, Quay Walker for the Green Bay Packers. Second year player. Devondre Campbell's still there. I think we're pretty bullish here on Quay Walker.
Extremely bullish. Almost seeing it in this context, right? Like, oh, maybe
Yeah.
we're too bullish like Quay Walker.
Yeah,
Nah,
possibly.
double down. I love what he
Nice.
did. I love what he did last year. Obviously, Campbell, he got hurt for a bit of a stretch
Right.
there. Quay Walker's playing time wasn't that impacted that much because he was already on the field all the heckin' time, even
Exactly.
when Campbell was there. And he proved to
Yeah.
be a perfectly fine fantasy asset with Campbell. So obviously Campbell, they say he's 100% healthy. He's not getting any younger. So who really knows?
Mm-hmm.
Walker, just for the stats last year, 121 combined tackles, 1.5 sacks, 4 QB hits, 7 passes defended. He was used all over
Nice.
the field. He played 82% of defensive snaps, which again, that hits that 80% number for me.
Mm-hmm.
He's proven to be effective. He's gonna get, I think, way more playing time than even this.
Yeah.
Now that he has his NFL legs under him, the sky's the limit for this guy. The Packers defense, they did draft a rookie, but different position from Iowa. What's his name?
Oh yeah, Lucas Van Ness
Lucas Ness.
for
I
the
don't think that
defensive
really
line.
impacts Quay Walker at all.
No.
He's just going to be an absolute stud the entire year. I think he's one of those guys. Talk about breakout candidates. That
Yeah.
is going to just if people aren't paying attention, just going to explode into this top 10, just like this, just being who he is. Uh, and yeah, the rankings sort of lead you to that conclusion.
This is definitely like a calling our shot rankings. We just think, he's immensely, he's a first round draft pick. He's way more talented than Devondre Campbell. Just, rookie year, you can't ask for much better than that. And we just think he's going to take that step forward, sort of surpass Campbell in the quote unquote number 1, although they were basically 1A, 1B already. I think we just flip flop Walker to the 1A, Campbell to the 1B. And we saw Campbell have, in healthy seasons in Green Bay have, top 5, fantasy finishes. So this is basically a call or shot ranking. So
Yeah, and you can
that's
wait for him. I'm looking at not
yeah,
sponsor Fantasy Pros, their linebacker rankings. They have him as linebacker 26.
whew,
I think that's wrong. So you can wait for this
yeah,
guy. Like
yeah,
you can pair him with some of these other people. But
yeah,
I think this is a league winner for you.
for sure. Number 5 takes over the Roquan Smith role in Chicago. Hefty paycheck for Tremaine Edmonds. I know I'm probably driving him up there. I am extremely, extremely bullish on Edmonds this year. A lot of people are kind of, is it going to be Edmonds? Is it going to be TJ Edwards? We had this discussion during one of our very first episodes. So go back, check that out. I think it was right after the free agent signing. But I just think it's going to be Edmonds, and you know, stepping into the Roquan Smith role, he's similarly talented. He kind of was off to a slower start in Buffalo over the first 4 years, but he's still incredibly young. Um, and I think he just blossoms in Chicago.
Yep, we're on the same page there. I'm actually higher than him than you are. So the
What?
yeah, I know.
No way.
I mean, the Bears defense has proven that, multiple linebackers, talented linebackers, can be profitable there, right? Like they kind of
Yeah.
have a brand new linebacker room. So there is obviously some concern that It's not Tremaine Evans. It's, TJ Edwards that ends up taking more of that Roquan Smith tackle share. But yeah, same exact thing that you just said. I personally think it's Edmonds. And if he ends up actually doing that, this might be too low for when we see where he ends up at the end of the year. I think he's a more safer bet to at least end up again in this top 10, looking at the end of next year. So he's the guy I'll be gambling on that Bears defense.
Love it. Number 4, we've got the old consistent vet, Bobby Wagner, comes back to Seattle after a year's hiatus in the Rams. And he's just, Mr. Consistent, does it all. These top guys here, there's not a ton of in-depth analysis to give you. They're all home run picks. You can't go wrong. If they get unlucky and go down with injury, it kind of is what it is. We've given you plenty of names to fill in or pair with them that are not going to be drafted as top 10 guys, but who we think will be. So, I mean, what else? Not much else to say on Bobby Wagner.
No, like I've mentioned before, I'm a tier guy. Like I look at sort of
Yeah.
tiers by position, and I think there is a tier of 3 linebackers, sort of tier 1, being, Foyesade Oluokun, which you mentioned before, Roquan Smith, and Nick Bolton. All 3 we've talked about at length in previous podcasts and things. I think Wagner is like the beginning of tier 2, but like maybe you can call him tier 1B. I like him. He might be in a tier all of his own. I'm not walking away from the draft with one of those first 3 people. I'm going to be going after Wagner because after that it's a pretty big drop off in terms of potential there. So yeah, I don't think when you talk about the rest of the guys, they're all great. You want anyone on your team. But again, Wagner is sort of, if I'm not walking with one of those first 3, I'm walking away with Wagner.
Absolutely. And he's getting older, so he's not as exciting as some of these names, which is also pushing him down draft boards and making him a value. So, like you just mentioned, the next 3 names are all in the same tier, so they're interchangeable. I don't know that we're passionate about nailing the next guy who actually finishes as the linebacker one, because they're all going to give you incredible production. It's number 3 is Nick Bolton, number 2 is Roquan Smith, number 1 Foye Oluokun, Chiefs, Ravens, Jaguars. So 3-card Monty them all around. They're gonna all finish very closely. Like I said, I'm more passionate about these 4 through 12 and further guys than I am about the top 3. I don't really care about nailing the linebacker one. So these guys are all in the same tier.
Yeah, it's a bit of a fool's errand to try to debate the 3 because there's positive negatives. Like if anything, you're looking for anything, I think Nick Bolton has the greatest chance to not finish in the top 5, just solely based off of everything we already mentioned in terms of the Drew Tranquil signing and just a bunch of dudes there in Kansas City and their sort of track record at the linebacker position, which is why we have him 3rd of those 3. But we saw his ceiling last year, and his ceiling is, LB 1 or 2, right? Versus, Foye and Roquan, I think have more established, consistent production that we can sort of point to. But you're not gonna be mad getting any of those guys. Like you're gonna have a good time.
Absolutely. All right. So that finishes out linebackers. We're going to move to defensive line / edge rushers. So quickly skimming the list, no defensive tackles made this list. I do remember seeing Quinton Williams was just outside at like number 11 or 12. So keep him on your radar if you are required to take a defensive tackle. But this list is full of edge rushers and defensive ends primarily. So starting with number 10, we've got another New York Giant making the list in Kayvon Thibodeau. I think I'm super bullish on him. We saw a monster game from him in the fantasy playoffs last year. He, strip sack, returned a fumble for a touchdown. Like he possesses those kinds of games that will win you weeks and potentially win you championships. Like, yes, he might be a little frustrating week to week, similar to, not jumping totally ahead, but similar to number 9 on our list, Aiden Hutchinson. We saw him disappear for weeks last year. same thing with Thibodeau. He was also, coming off an injury after the draft, so he started a bit slowly. So, but I just think, if he's got his health behind him this year and he can play a full year, I think he's in a position to smash. That whole defensive line alone is stacked between Ojulari, Thibodeau, Lawrence, Leonard Williams. There will be no double teaming, and if that's the case, I think that opens him up to just absolutely skyrocket in his second year.
Yeah, for the sake of brevity, I think we can lump Aiden Hutchinson into this conversation too, because they're
Sure.
kind of both the same player, right?
Yeah,
They both
basically
had, I mean, both second years, both kind of exploded in games, in spurts, as you'd
at
expect them
times.
to.
Yeah.
The defensive linemen typically take longer to get into their NFL bodies and be consistently productive. So
Mhm,
definitely not a disappointing year, I think, for either of them based off of
mhm,
what we should realistically expect from a defensive lineman. So yeah, I think it's a fun conversation of which you would rather have. So uh, yeah, I like the people on that Giants defensive line taking away attention from Thibodeau. He might be the one people still put attention on, but as you mentioned,
mhm.
he has proven that he can get through it. Now it's a matter of that being more consistent. And then Hutchinson, very similar spot there in
Yeah,
Detroit.
totally.
Maybe has fewer people to take attention away from him, but there's a reason why he was drafted ahead of Thibodeau, right? It's
Mhm,
because he has more upside there, just as a pure from a pure skill position, at least or
mhm.
perspective, in my opinion. So I think we have this right. I'd rather have Hutchinson than Thibodeau here, but you're kind of splitting hairs, especially at that 9-10 price point,
Right.
where that's not a guaranteed smash hero defensive lineman you're drafting there. Like you're good
Mhm.
to fade the position. Like you're going to want to get a couple of those guys, so that you can survive the weeks so they don't necessarily totally survive, while also hedging some of those bets.
I see. I'll split it there. Give me Thibodeau just because he'll be cheaper. Hutchinson's got the name value.
Fair.
They were only three picks apart in the draft. I like Thibodeau higher than Hutchinson. We're going to see the Jaguars probably fail with another number one pick there, in Trayvon Walker. Maybe not fail, but he's obviously not on this list. So yeah, I want the value on that one. So I'm not going to reach, and people
Oh,
love Hutchinson. Totally fair.
if you're talking with ADP,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
agree with you.
So, but there another reason they're back to back. So, flipping up next, number 8 is Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers. Just a rock solid guy you can plug in for close to 60 tackles and 8.5 sacks. Seems like he's struggling to kind of break through the glass ceiling of double digits. I don't think he's reached double
He
digits,
did
but if
it,
he has,
12 and a half.
okay, okay.
He went
Um,
7.5, 9, 9, 12 and a half, which is just
oh, just last year.
mhm.
Okay. Okay. So we did break through the ceiling, but it'll be interesting to see if he could do it again. You know, only knock I guess would be new coordinator, potentially new scheme. I'm hearing he might go more of that Hassan Reddick, like standing up edge rusher role. So who knows how that could impact him, but hopefully it's for the better.
It's just one of those players where, like, defensive line is so hard because, like you
Mhm.
mentioned, sacks are hard to consistently come by. So
Yeah.
there's something very nice when you have a player that can consistently do it.
Mhm.
Granted, it won't be every game. That's not a
Right.
realistic
Not a
expectation.
thing. Yeah.
Right. But uh yeah, just there's something to be said with not having to guess for the Aiden Hutchinson
Mhm.
3 sack game and just yielding a
Yeah.
bunch of zeros versus a guy that I don't have it up, 12 and a half sacks, easily more than half of the games he had a sack, presumably. Again, don't
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
stats right in front of me.
Yeah.
Uh,
He spaced them out pretty good. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure.
it's just that's just nice. It just
Mhm.
makes me feel warm inside. So
Yeah.
uh, that's someone who I'd want on my team.
Absolutely. Number 7 is a big breakout candidate on pretty much any informed IDP analyst or company's list.
Which
It's
means he
Jalen
won't.
Phillips.
Which means he
You're
won't.
wrong. Right, we're all going to be wrong. That's crazier things have happened, but it's Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher for the Miami Dolphins. We've hopefully have a coordinator in Vic Fangio there now who will know how to use him. I believe we talked about him on the last show, either
Mhm.
last show or 2 shows ago, where some of PFF's tracking and metrics, he was being dropped into coverage, and that's just not what he does or not who he is. He's a pass rusher. He was hand in the dirt at Miami. Like, he's a pass rusher. So hopefully Vic Fangio figures that out. I'm confident that he will. And I think we see a 12 and a half or 10 double-digit sack season from Phillips, in addition to potentially a solid tackle floor. I think he's basically a clone of Brian Burns, to an extent, at least from an IDP potential standpoint. And I think he clones some of Burns' better seasons this year. I think he really makes the leap.
Yeah, rookie year 2 years ago, 8.5 sacks, 42 combined tackles, perfectly fine for a rookie. Second year, 7 sacks, not as great, but 61 combined tackles. Honestly, if he can keep that floor for tackles, like, that's some pretty elite
Yeah.
floor from the
For
defensive
that
end
position.
position.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and then if you can get me 3 more sacks, get to that double
Mhm.
digits, like, get him getting after the quarterback, which he's very good at doing. Uh, yeah, that's a breakout candidate right there. Everyone's high on him.
Yeah.
Everyone was high on him last year
Yeah.
too. He was the breakout candidate, as you can imagine, after those rookie stats. Uh, but I think this might be the year. Because earnestly, he's not that far off. If you can keep those same combined tackles and add 3 or 4 sacks, then
Yeah.
boom, there it is.
Everyone's high on him, yet his ADP is still palatable, which is really nice. So yeah, you can get him at a fair market value right now, which is probably not the case for our number 6 uh, ranked edge rusher here in Hassan Reddick for the Philadelphia Eagles. 16-ish sack range is going to have people reaching him for him. Go Birds. We've got a lot of Eagles fans out there in the fantasy community, probably a lot more than Dolphins fans. So you stack that on top of it, and he's actually being drafted a lot higher than our number 6 ranking here.
Yeah, what I love about Reddick is his last 3 years, he's on 3 different teams, right? So
Yeah,
2020 in Arizona, 12.5 sacks. Carolina in 2021, 11 sacks. Philadelphia
yeah.
last year, 16 sacks. Uh, I mean, that's just incredible consistency, right? We talk about a lot of factors going into outlooks for players, and changing schemes or changing defensive coordinators or changing teams often are looked at as a negative, which because it just makes things more unreliable. There's less data to go off of. There's uh, more variables. The fact that in 3 different teams he was able to put up DL1 numbers is incredible. He's sort of matchup slash defensive
Team
coordinator
proof.
scheme.
Yeah, yeah.
He's team proof. And this time he's going to be even more consistent on, again, that Philadelphia Eagles defensive line is still heckin' stacked. I
Yeah.
know they lost some people, but uh he's going to feast. You feel very confident in him with him there at 5. I don't know why he's not maybe a little higher than this after seeing this. I'm probably going to adjust my ranks, as often happens when we actually talk through it. It he, I don't know what more there is to say, than if you are waiting and end up with him as your DL5, you did it.
Yeah, he's definitely going, like I said, probably higher than that.
Yeah.
New defensive coordinator, so a little bit of potential risk there, or just uneasiness about repeating those numbers. 16 is obviously a career year. It got him paid. I don't know if we can pencil him for 60. We probably pencil him in for double digits, but I don't know about 16, being a little cautiously optimistic. I mean, who do we put him ahead of here? We're into the top 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think this is the time where we can consolidate, in terms of, like, let's
Yeah,
just talk about these 4 dudes, right?
yeah.
Number 4, you got Max Crosby there on the Raiders.
Oh, well, wait, top 5. Top 5. We got to
Oh,
start
oh,
with,
I missed 5. Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Jeepers.
TJ.
My apologies,
T,
Sicoli.
you're
5,
good.
TJ Watt. 4, Max Crosby. 3, Micah Parsons. 2, Nick Bosa. And number 1, Myles Garrett there in
Yeah.
Cleveland. Uh, yeah, I guess any quick takes on these top 5?
I mean, it's incredibly similar to what you touched on with the linebackers in the tier. This tier is a larger tier
That's
1,
the
and
that's the tier.
Reddick, similar to Wagner, is sort of a tier 1B in his own, and then you've got those guys that we talked about before. So these 5/6 are honestly all interchangeable as well. I'm going to quickly touch on a guy who our IDP draft kit is right around the corner to being released. I have a special write-up coming for Michael Parsons as a bust candidate this year. Now, I'm not talking about busting out of the top 10, but he's often being the first IDP player taken out of anyone. And I think at that price, he is going to be a massive bust. Just with the loss of sort of playing that more traditional linebacker role and his tackle floor. So he's going to be a boomer bust. He's going to be closer to like an Aiden Hutchinson, where he could disappear for weeks. He give you 1, 0, 2 points. Yeah, he could have massive blow up weeks, and you're probably going to hang with him starting. But are you going to be satisfied with that looking back at the end of the year? When you've got those holes, and what if they come during the fantasy playoffs? You're going to be super disappointed. So I just think at the price tag now, we have him as number 3. Like I said, he's often going much higher, than that, but ADP, and he's normally the number 1 defensive player. I think with this quote unquote role change, I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. He does not have a built-in floor with a guy like Max Crosby playing with his hand in dirt, gave you all those tackles last year. I just don't know that he gives you that. So that's where I'm a bit hesitant on Michael Parsons being on many of my, especially redraft teams this year. Probably not going to make it on a lot of
Yeah, and I think everything you said is totally fair. In terms of the other guys, why is Max Crosby, why is Myles Garrett number 1, right? Compared to some of these other guys, the reigning defensive player of the year coming into the audacity, and TJ Watt being 5. So I think Watt is there, just the injury
them. Right.
stuff is scary. Like, it's just an inherent risk. Sure, the upside is there because when he's healthy, my God.
Yeah,
But
monster.
when you're putting in one of these hero DL guys, I you can never predict injuries, but you kind of I prefer sort of the other guys there. But then Garrett versus Bosa. So Bosa has 4 years in the league. He had 1 that he missed due to an injury, which
Right.
again happens. But 9 sacks, 15 and a half, 18 and a half. That's phenomenal. You're not gonna be mad
Yeah.
about that. But then Garrett is just absolutely unreal. He has 6 years in the league. I'll go from latest to the most recent.
Okay.
Here's just his sack numbers: 7, 13 and a half, 10, 12, 16, 16.
There.
Like, just the absolute consistency. So if you are
Yeah.
going to go for someone and you wanna get a DL that you know is going to do something, you don't have some of those question marks like you have,
Right.
with Parsons, or any of that injury stuff. Like, Garrett is just a lock for double digit plus sacks. So again, I don't often suggest paying the price for the top
Mhm.
guys, right? Kind of like going after the last people in tier 1 because you kind of get the value while still getting, someone from that
Mhm.
tier. So I'll be, if we were going based off of this for us, the Watts, uh, the Crosbys, so to speak. I would not fault you for going after Garrett and saying, "I'm just gonna punt on the DL position," especially in
Yeah.
leagues where you only have 1 DL. Just punt on that for the rest of it because he's your guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Um, excellent stuff. All right, we're gonna move to defensive backs, and shocker, no corners made it to this list, unfortunately.
Ah,
I think with a lot of defensive leagues that are set up, corners aren't going to be super drafted, especially we're talking this top level stuff. So we've each got a couple favorites. Marcus Jones from your Patriots is one of mine. Um, if you really want to take a shot, but they're going to be not as consistent as some of the safeties here. So um, we'll start. Number 10 could be a surprising name to some. It's Amani Hooker, the safety from the Tennessee Titans. I'm super bullish on him. Probably driving him to be in the top 10 for the
this
most
one is
part.
you.
I think I'm slowly convincing people to at least, give him more respect than he's deserving. And another guy that you're not going to have to spend the number 10 defensive back price on at all. So part of this bullish prediction for me is that Kevin Byard, it seems like they're kind of on the rocks relationship wise with the Titans there. So he might not even be with the team to start the season. And Hooker, when healthy, another guy who's got to figure it out, get his body right and play, give us, double digit games into the depth of the season if he can. His per game point production is awesome. I mean, he gives you tackles, he gives you splash plays. Like he's a ball hawk. He's all over the place. So if he can take over that more traditional strong safety role, I think he's a home run here at number 10.
Yeah, I think that's the right amount of risk with that, that price tag. When he's on the field, he's on the field. The last 2 years, 91% defensive snaps played, 90% last year. When he's there, he plays, and that's what you want. And like you said, his points per game are nuts. He knows how to score your team points. The question mark: will he be on the field? Right, like he's had these sort of injury concerns the last couple of years. In the last 2 years, only 21 total games played. But when he plays, he's great. So I think 10 is about right. Number 11 is my guy, Kyle Duggar, which I might argue I like a little more because he does play. He does see the field. But I will say the upside that you kind of get with the Hooker lottery ticket, I can see the justification for him making the top 10. And Duggar, not as exciting. More consistent, but not as exciting. I can kind of see I can see why he's outside.
Totally true. Hooker is, for those of us who are going to continue to punt defensive back, as you pretty much always should. Zion, I believe, had a commentary on that we're going to talk through in our Discord a little bit. But yeah, so Hooker is the ultimate, like, you're taking him with like your last pick, and he very well could last until then. And I just think at that return, he's definitely worth the price tag. So number 9 is Isaiah Simmons from the Arizona Cardinals, who also has linebacker eligibility on sleepers still. Now that might change depending on how we see camp and preseason go, but Simmons is a guy who I think carries more value as a defensive back than he did as a linebacker. So sort of on this Jeremy Chin role / arc, where he plays in the sweet spot, as our friends at the IDP show like to call it. So if he remains in that role, I think he's a great target here, number 9. He's kind of a guy that, like, I was, as purely a linebacker, I was very much starting to be out on him, but now transitioning into more of this hybrid role, they're pulling me back in just when I thought I was out. So
yeah, I mean, he just where he plays in the defense is kind of seen in his stats, right? 99 combined tackles, he had 4 sacks, he had a couple of interceptions, 7 pass defended. Like, he does it all. He's all over the field, which is kind of fun, right? It's fun to not know how you're getting points, but you're going to get your points there. So yeah, having him at 9, again, we harp on this. The Cardinals offense is going to be bad. That Cardinals defense is going to be on the field a lot. And that's going to lead. Yeah. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity for players like Simmons to just rack up those stats. Don't ignore players on defenses where their offenses are bad, because the opportunity is very much so there, and less so I find than on offense. Defensive players typically stay in the game for the entire game no matter what, versus like pulling, starting quarterbacks or starting other positional players. The defense is typically out there because you can't let the other team back in the game. We've seen some crazy comebacks in the past, right? So you don't need to score more points, but you need to stop the other team from scoring points. So little soapbox there. But Simmons there at 9 is great.
This could signal. Oh, I was just quickly going to say, this could signal the end of the Jalen Thompson. He could be turning back to a pumpkin if they hand over the second safety spot to Simmons, which could very well happen. And also for these both defensive backs and linebackers in front of him are pretty much all trash. There's nobody good. So they're not going to be getting to the quarterback very often, which means lots of passing, lots of opportunities. So Simmons, and I'm just going to quickly jump ahead to Budda Baker, makes it to the list at number 6. So they're that tandem there. Like I said, we've seen Jalen Thompson have some productive years these past couple of years. Buda Baker has finished as safety or defensive back number 2 as recently as a couple of years ago. He's kind of slowed down these past couple of years, but I think, like I just mentioned, with everyone in front of them being pretty much god awful, I think there's going to be tons of opportunities. So Simmons and Baker being at 6 and 9, nice, are very interchangeable, and you're kind of splitting hairs with pretty much everyone on this list overall. I'm
Yeah.
sure our friend Tom Kislingberry from Twitter has done research on this, but or I know he has with the people who fall out of the top 10 versus new people. So, you know, Baker and Simmons are the best players on that defense. So they're great picks for defensive backs. You want to take number 8?
Oh, sure. I was going to just add, yeah, I think Thompson's not there
Yeah.
just because he doesn't have the big splash play upside versus the other guys are
Right.
a little more consistently getting those splash plays for your team. Thompson definitely has a role in certain league sizes and certain league things, but not enough to be top 10. Get out of here. But yeah, I'll gladly take number 8. CJ Gardner Johnson finds himself with a new team in Detroit.
Yeah.
This is one of your guys, or
Yeah.
formerly a guy from your favorite Eagles. So I'll let you take the
Yeah.
first swing at it.
Yeah, for sure. This we alluded to it earlier. There's a camp battle. The number 2 spot next to him is pretty much wide open, but we think he's got the safety 1, we'll call it, because a lot of the teams aren't really doing the whole free safety, strong safety thing as much anymore. We think Gardner Johnson is taking the strong safety role. Also plays in the sweet spot a lot, which is very nice. Can play some nickel corner if they need him to, coverage guy. So, and that offense projects to be very good. So, in the same spot where the team's offense is going to be bad, when you have a good offense, that can be good as well. You kind of just don't want to be middle of the pack, because when you
Mhm.
have a good offense, you're going to be in shootouts potentially a lot of close games, a lot of opportunity there. So it's really just those middle of the packs that can kind of sway things. Be not as attractive for IDP players. So Gardner Johnson, I could in Dynasty, I think I had him as high as like the 3rd defensive back overall. In redraft, I think I'm just being a little more bearish based on finding a new system and finding a new team, and we want to make sure what we're going to see out of him is actually going to happen from being the strong safety. So if I see that, if I see the alignments going well in preseason and training camp, he's probably going to move up for me, closer to the top 5ish. But for right now, I'm just being a little bearish being on the new team, new system.
Yeah. For me, I obviously had a huge year last year. 6 interceptions, 67 combined tackles, a sack,
Yeah, was he?
8 pass defended, which you should be getting points for that. And if you're not, that's not good. For me, it's a little splash play dependent. Like I'd like to see in this defensive back
Yeah.
rankings, more consistent tackles, because again, splash plays are not a given. Just like sacks, interceptions. Sometimes the best defensive backs out there, don't get interceptions for whatever reason, or you can't really count on them every single year. The opportunity is there, kind of like we talked about with other people, where he's the guy, and the whoever's starting alongside him, is going to be a relative unknown. I do like Kirby Joseph, and like I mentioned in other talks, I do like Brian Branch. Like I think there's a way that all works, but I expect CJ to be on the field a whole bunch. The question is, will he be able to replicate those interceptions or find a way to up that tackle floor? Where we have him, I think is right. Um, but I'll be interested to see how he's used in now his 3rd team
Yeah.
in 3 years.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's going to be, it's all about, where is he going to play, and then what is his role on the defense going to be.
Mhm,
So, complete contrast to that is number 7, just uber consistent guy, Minka
mhm.
Fitzpatrick, Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a guy. This is a plug and play guy. He's not going to give you many disappointing games. His ceiling is sort of capped, but he'll come through with a big game every now and then. But I mean, IDP points, he's pretty much giving you double digits every game, and a guy you're going to be very happy to have on your team. He's affordable at ADP, so everything kind of just aligns. I think this is a perfect ranking for him at number 7.
Yeah, I don't think he's the sexiest pick, but kinda like Brian Burns from the previous section,
Yeah,
you know exactly
spot.
what you're gonna get at 7, which is, yeah, you want
Yeah.
someone that is going to consistently put up double-digit points for your team. There's not a whole lot of variance there, and he will surprise you with, some splash plays here and there.
Mhm.
Not much more to say that I think, yes, 7 is right. Is not,
Yeah.
uh, as much upside like you mentioned. Like, I don't think he's gonna be a top 5 guy, with the variance at the position and just, how he's being used, but he's a pretty safe bet to be top 10, top 15, which is kinda what you're looking for at that 7 spot.
100%. Yeah, nothing too crazy. He's not gonna like disappoint you, especially
Right.
at that ranking and where you can get him in drafts. So we talked about Buda Baker, number 6. Again, this he could easily be interchangeable with a lot of guys here. Um, but again, we're projecting that offense to be pretty bad. So hopefully, he's got opportunities to increase his tackles and hopefully splash plays this year. I think
Mhm.
I think that's where he's kind of been letting us down the past couple of years after his monster year in 2020. So I don't know. Unless you have more on Baker, we can go to number 5.
No, let's go to Kyle Hamilton. Yeah, number 5
Oh,
coming in, Kyle
fun
Hamilton.
name.
This is just purely speculation, right? So coming out, uh, la last year, this is yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, coming out last year, there's a lot of hype about Hamilton, how he's gonna be used, on that Ravens defense, and
Mhm,
just the fantasy upside, right? And to be honest, he didn't really live up to it, right? He did not live up to
mhm,
the hype. They rarely do. He ended up with 62 combined tackles,
mhm,
2 sacks, 5 passes defended, no interceptions. He only played 53% of the defensive snaps. And that's sort of where this projection comes in, right? We're very bullish on him getting, full range to that defense being actually utilized. He really came on strong towards the end of the year once the Ravens kind of
mhm,
figured out how to use him.
mhm,
So if they use him accordingly, uh, the 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 sky's the limit for this guy.
mhm. That's what we're projecting. We're projecting off of the games where he was having significant snap counts and significant effects on the game. I mean, let's just talk through what the Ravens secondary looked like last year. It was the starters were Chuck Clark and Marcus Williams, who they brought in from free agency and gave a nice little contract to. Marcus Williams missed some time, and it was Geno Stone who filled in, a complete just a guy. So now Chuck Clark was off to the Jets, got injured, out for the year. So now Marcus Williams still there, but Marcus Williams probably playing more of that center field free safety type role. So Hamilton projects to be, more of that starting safety, hopefully playing in some sweet spot, which is, box safety, closer to the line of scrimmage, more of that strong safety traditional role. So we are totally projecting off of that being his role and off of some of his games later in the season when he was actually getting the playing
100%. All right. Up next, we have Jeremy Chin. Jeremy
time.
Chin. And let's just talk about him with Jaquan Brisker here. Save
Yeah.
save a bit of time. So Chin has had some injury problems last year. He missed some time.
Hmm.
He only played in 11 games. So when he did, he put up Jeremy Chin numbers. He had
Hmm.
70 combined tackles. He had a sack, a bunch of passes defended. No interceptions, but again, interceptions are kind of tough.
Yeah.
So, maybe we don't have to talk about them together, but I think you kinda know what you're getting with Chin, when he's on the field. He's kinda like, Fitzpatrick, where you kinda know what you're getting.
Mhm.
Uh, there's no one else really on that team that's gonna really impact his playing time. Xavier Woods, was productive for a little bit there, mostly while Chin was gone. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, you just kinda like him.
Yeah, I think he still has linebacker eligibility on sleeper too, which
Yes.
can be nice, although he obviously gives you more value as a safety. He is similar to Brisker in that they were both playing a lot of box closer to the line of scrimmage snaps last year. Where now, so moving to Brisker, that could be a downside for him because I think he was doing that out of necessity during those middle
Mm.
weeks after Roquan Smith had gone, entered Jack Sanborn, and Mr. completely unexciting Nicholas Morrow was still
Yeah.
there. So I think, he was kind of playing down there and soaking up a lot of tackles more out of necessity. This year, it's going to be TJ Edwards, it's going to be Tremaine Edmonds. So Brisker might be moving down for me. In Dynasty, I still think he deserves this kind of top 3, top 5 ranking. But for redraft, I might be swapping someone like him and like Gardner Johnson. So I'm a little more bearish on Brisker. Chin, I think, is fine there at number 4. Again, a lot of these guys are very interchangeable and are going to finish very close to each other.
Well, yeah, the top 3 being Brisker and then Jalen Piter at number 2, and then everyone's favorite, Derwin James at number 1. There's a lot of things in common there, and that is where they line up on the defense. They are there to
Yeah.
soak up a bunch of tackles, and when you're around the ball, you have the chance to make splash plays. Again, like, especially with I think you nailed it with Brisker. It's probably too bullish on him as well. But in terms of Piter and Derwin James, like, you flip a coin. Like, obviously, Piter did it last year and had an absolute breakout rookie campaign. There's a new defensive coordinator there, so who knows what that's going to sort of look like if he's going to be used in a similar way. But like that team is just so bad. Piter was so good. I don't see a world where he's not utilized in a very similar way, right? And then our
Yeah.
king Derwin James, like
King
all.
James. King James of the NFL.
Like, all he does is win. No, just extremely consistent triple digit
Yeah.
combined tackles when he's healthy, which he came back from the
Right.
2020 season that he missed due to an injury with 2 very similar 118, 115 things
Mhm.
with 2 sacks and 4 sacks. Like, he's the number 1, right? He's your guy.
Yeah.
He's your guy. But
Yeah. A lot of people are probably going to take. Well, first of all, we got to get your Jalen Petrie pronunciation
oh
down.
no.
Think
Oh
Land
geez.
Before Time, little Petrie.
Petrie, got it.
The R's before the E. But a lot of people are going to be taking him because he finished, I think, as a DB1 in
Yeah.
most leagues. But again, like you mentioned, completely new regime there. So, and it's just not realistic to expect a rookie to maintain that sort of level of production when he came storming out of the gates. If you're drafting him at that, I mean, that is probably going to be his ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Again, the linebackers in front of him stink. Not many pass rushers. Will Anderson's there now. They could fix that problem. So obviously, we still like him as a top guy, but you want a guy like Derwin James is just the model of consistency, right? Yes, he battled injuries in the past. That can be very bad luck. He's getting a little older, but like not the greatest linebackers there. I think the role that they deploy him in just all over the place, he just does nothing but produce fantasy points. So
Yeah, and in a position where
smash.
turnover in the top 10 happens quite a bit just due
Yeah.
to, people like, uh, Petrie come out of nowhere, right, and put up these monster years. Like, you're looking for that consistency if you're gonna put that kind of, draft capital in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I mean, even if he doesn't finish as the defensive back one in whether it be total points per game, I like looking at points per game more so
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
end of year finishes, like if they can skew things. But even if he doesn't finish there, I think he's still worthy of taking as the defensive back one, just because of again his role and the consistency that he brings you. And again, pretty much he would be probably in a tier in his own. And
Yeah,
then 2 through 10 are all one gigantic tier. They're all
100%.
going to be within a point or two per game, most likely, between all of them. So listen, we're splitting hairs. You punt on your defensive backs. You take which one of these guys fall to you, and don't worry about it because there's gonna be a guy that comes along. There's gonna be a Jonathan Owens. There's gonna be a Jalen Petrie of this year who
Mhm.
comes along, and you're gonna scoop off waivers and you're gonna plug him in because maybe Buda Baker isn't giving you what you thought you were gonna get out of him this year. So that's
Precisely.
that's how to deal with defensive backs. Not super exciting. So we hope everyone enjoyed this top 10 list, our mailbag questions, and some DeAndre Hopkins talk. I will sign off with just letting you know about the IDP draft kit right around the corner. Be $20. You can, if you want to hang off for about a week or so, use the code IDP podcast or pod IDP pod 10% off. You want to hang off, give us like a week to just kind of wrangle everything together. It will be deployed very soon. But yeah, I highly suggest you become a subscriber. We have a lot of fun in our Discord, and we ultimately, the best part of it is we help you manage your teams, mostly dynasty teams. We will help you through your drafts and hopefully help you deliver a championship. So you find me, I live on Twitter, Dynasty Santa, DMs are open. Yeah, that's my sign off for tonight. Tell them, Matt.
Couldn't have said it better. I'm at mrecord21. Hit us up across all those socials. And yeah, let's win these leagues together. Yeah.
Great episode. And thank you all for listening.
See you next week.
I will edit this out. Of course, my mouse will not find the end recording button. Why?
I can.
Jeez.
I see it.
What, you can do it. Can you hit it? I don't